The TCG exclusives that we've gotten over the past couple years have been all over the place. Burning Abyss obviously was really powerful and was a meta deck for years after it was released. Cosmo followed a similar path, and even Kaijus, while they weren't actually played on their initial release, are now some of the most meta-relevant side deck and main deck cards of today. We focus on the new wave of TCG exclusives in this video because so far they've been underwhelming. FAs, which is the cards we're going to talk about in this video, were the first to be announced, where Vendread's only got their one card announced. That was the sneak peek promo, and then the other cards got leaked. But Konami of Europe released all 4 FA cards randomly pretty much earlier this summer, and they were pretty underwhelming. So I'm going to briefly go through these cards, or at least explain what they do. The entire premise is that you have these 2 level 4 monsters, and they gain like gimmicky effects when they hit level 7 or higher, and they gain 300 attack for every level they have. And then they also have this blanket effect that like prevents them from being prevents something happening with cards that are equal to or less level than them, or rank. And you know, the level manipulation decks have never really been good. If you think of like Fortune Ladies, the only reason Fortune Ladies were ever considered even halfway decent as like a splashable engine had nothing to do with the level modification, and had everything to do with the field spell, the draw spell, and Fortune Lady water being actually pretty good. Because level manipulation implies that cards stay around. And spoiler alert, cards don't stay around very many turns. You know, I just made a video about Kaijus and how it thwarts people from actually playing boss monsters. So when you built your whole deck around gain levels, it's really inefficient. So these cards weren't very good. I will say that FA Hang On Mock actually had some potential, at least in a vacuum, just because it was unaffected by activated effects from opponent's monsters whose original level or rank is lower than this card's level, which is a lot better than the battle protection from the other one. And then also, so they gain levels not only through the spell and trap effects themselves, but every time you activate a spell or trap that has FA in the name, they gain 1 level. And then also, if you get Hang 'em Mock up 3 levels, it's a Macrocosmos. So that's pretty cool. And then you looked, they gave us a field spell. Field spell seemed kind of underwhelming, but likely the best card of all of them. All the FA monsters gain 2 levels during the battle phase, which means that if you summon one of them and then activate the field spell when you enter the battle phase, they'll actually be level 7, so they'll have that bonus effect. And then if an FA monster destroys a monster at battle, you get to draw a card, so that's pretty cool. And then if it's destroyed, you get to search a thing. That's also pretty cool, sort of like a Cosmo Town-like effect. And then FA Downforce, I feel, is just straight garbage for the same reason that, I mean, we can keep making comparisons to Fortune Ladies here. Fortune Ladies had a card that was almost exactly the same as FA Downforce, where all it did was increase the level of the card. Now, I will say that Downforce has a slightly added utility here because it gets a second use out of its effect, but overall, pretty underwhelming. But I thought that Hang 'em Mock at least had some potential, because it's sort of just like, depending on how high a level you get it, it's actually kind of tough to deal with, especially when you get it to level 7, so it's a Macrocosmos. Still loses to Kaijus, but outside of that, it's actually pretty good. No protection from spell and traps, obviously. In the field spell, while it would probably be better on like another archetype, because it has some neat effects here. You get free draws, you get free searches, level increasing effect is kind of cool. But no one played these cards at all. At least Vendreads were like played in a couple different decks. Like I played them, they were kind of fun in Zombies. This was played in virtually nothing. And today I got out of class and they released the other 4 new ones. So we're going to talk about them and see how Konami aims to fix this deck. Here's the picture. This was posted on the official Konami Europe page, similar to the last one. It'll probably be a while before we see the Vendreads, because last time the only reason we saw them early was because they were leaked. And the sneak peek promo is not a Vendread card, so we don't even know what any of them are at this point. But they just gave us all of these at one time. The text on this picture is ridiculously small, so we're actually just going to go through this article and read it. So the first card is FA Whip Crosser, a level 4 monster, just like all of them. Still has the attack gaining effect, and its blanket effect is probably the worst out of all of these. Your opponent must play 300 life points to activate the effect of a monster whose original level rank is lower than this card's level. That's so bad. It's like a worse Trickstar effect. It's like a worse, I mean, hell, it's a worse Red Eyes Flare Dragon effect, or Flare Metal Dragon, whatever the Ring 7 card is. That is 500 for every card activated. That's just irrelevant. 300 is not enough, and especially because it only does monster effects with a lower level in it. I mean, I guess it's cool for like some chump damage, but that's like not important at all. Still is a level gain effect when you activate a FA spell or trap card, and then its level 7 or higher effect is your opponent cannot discard or send cards from their hand to the graveyard to activate a card effect, which is kind of neat. It stops like hand traps, basically. The problem is that this deck is crappy, and your opponent really doesn't even need hand traps to beat this deck, so I don't know if that's really relevant. This one's probably the worst FA to be released so far, but anyway. Well, let's move on to FA Turbocharger. This one is level 6, so automatically you're only one level away from that level 7, and it has bonus effects. So, of course, it gains the attack equal to its level times 300, and then when basically whatever level it is, your opponent's monsters with equal or less levels or ranks, this becomes a decoy roid for, so they can't attack any other cards besides that one, and then they also can't target monsters with lower level, or they also can't target cards that are less than its level. So it's basically just protecting monsters from your opponent's monsters that have less level than it. So if that makes sense, you can read the effect there, but that's pretty much what it does. It's basically just a decoy roid for attacks and card effects, and then all you have to do is activate one FA spell and trap, and then it instantly goes level 7. Level 7 effect makes all of your other FA monsters, I guess itself as well, but it makes all your FA monsters Armades, basically, and that's kind of neat. I mean, that's not super relevant in today's metagame, but overall, it's not bad to have your monsters have Armades effects. Moving on to FA Off-Road Grand Prix. So this is another field spell card, which I think is kind of weird, and we're going to talk about how Konami, I think, intends you to use these cards. So it's a field spell card, and it increases the level of all FA monsters on field by 2 during the main phase only. So if you remember, the last field spell card increased their levels by 2 during the battle phase. This one is during the main phase. When a FA monster you control is destroyed by battle, you can discard one random card from your opponent's hand, so they're kind of like Machina Fortress in that way without the looking effect. That's kind of neat. I wish that wasn't once per turn, but it is, so that's kind of bad. But it gets you a free discard, that's alright, I guess. And then if this card is destroyed by card effect, you can add one FA card from deck to your hand, just like the other one. So I think the way that Konami intends you to use these is by, during your turn, normal summoning, like let's say you normal summon FA Hang On Mock, so it's level 4, and then you activate FA Circuit Grand Prix, so now it's level 5, and you enter your battle phase, so now it's level 7. You attack over a monster, so you draw a card and the monster is banished. And then during your main phase 2, you then play the new field spell Off-Road Grand Prix on top of the old one, and then that makes it so that during your opponent's turn, during your opponent's main phase, that is, when you pass turn, they now have to somehow deal with your monster that's level 6. Well, at that point, it'd actually be level 7, because it's, so it's level 5, goes up by 2, and then it's level 6 when you activate the second field spell, and then your opponent's turn starts, so it's level 8. So now you have a 2400 attack monster that they can't target, or that's unaffected by active effects of level 8 or lower. So that's pretty much all of them that your opponent would be playing. And then if they do manage to kill it during their battle phase, which is pretty much what they'll have to do, because then it goes down to level 6, you get to discard a card from their hand, and then if they try to kill the field spell, you get to search a card. That's basically how I think Konami wants you to do it. I think in practice, that's actually the most garbage strategy. Well, it's not the most garbage. I'm being too hard on this, but in practice, that sounds awful. For the same reason that Trimids, the rock archetype that had 3 field spells, one of the reasons that it's really bad to base a deck on multiple field spells that you need to have in play is because if you don't give them, I mean, even Trimids, they had a ton of ways to cycle through their field spells, which is what made them so, I mean, at least halfway decent, was that they had effects that swapped out the field spells, or if FAs do not have that effect, so you have to manually draw these cards, and that sounds kind of rough. I suppose you can use like set rotation. That's not the worst thing I've ever heard. Obviously terraforming, but at the moment it's not like a good way to gain advantage unless your opponent is stupid and just keeps destroying the field spells, which then, yes, lets you search the other field spells. I don't know. I think that's impractical, but I also think that I honestly believe that opening both field spells and Hang on Mock is actually pretty decent. The deck itself would be way too inconsistent because there's no searchers, but if we're just looking at how much value you can get out of those 3 cards, I actually think that's a pretty good opening turn where you attack over something, draw a card, pass, your opponent has to run your guy over, you discard a card from their hand. That's pretty good. It's all right, especially because your guy's a Macrocosmos. Probably not practical, but it's pretty good. Anyway, the quick play spell card, and this is probably the best card that they have so far. It's target 1 FA monster you control, reduce its level by 2, and if you do, draw cards equal to the number of FA pit stop in your graveyard plus 1. So it's sort of like Good Goblin Housekeeping, which probably none of you have been around for, but that card used to be on the ban list, believe it or not. Anyway, so the first one that you use, you're going to be reducing a monster's level by 2 to Upstart Goblin. The second one you're using is a Pot of Greed, and then the third one you're using is just a +2 immediately. That's insane, actually. The third one, if the game ever gets to that point, will be crippling, basically. And then also it has the bonus effect of during your main phase, except the turn this was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard, target 1 FA monster in your graveyard, special summon it, and you can only use each effect once per turn, obviously. This card's actually really good card design, I feel like. Mostly because the level... This is like the Fortune Lady thing, right? So the level part is actually, in my opinion, the least important part of these cards. When you look at like Hang on Mock, it's not, the level of it really doesn't matter. Just as a normal summon a level 4 that's hard to deal with, that goes up to level 5, and then potentially level 7 or 8 makes it powerful, but the level itself doesn't matter. So FA Pit Stop, if we take out, I mean, if you just look at this card in terms of like any other archetype, this card is a free Upstart Goblin, potentially Pot of Greed, potentially even more than that, and also a Monster Reborn. And in a vacuum, that's a pretty fucking good card. And I don't think the rest of these cards are very good, but I do think that FA Pit Stop, if you look at it, I know it's hard looking at it outside of the archetype, but if you take out the fact that it's an FA card, this card's really good. And if they get more cards like that, I don't want to make any crazy claims, but assuming they get more cards like this, FAs could have potential to be a rogue deck. I will say, after being someone that said that a lot of times with Subterrors, that I wouldn't hold your breath, because, you know, I dealt with Subterrors, you know, they had 4 good cards when they opened up. During the next set, they got Archer. That card was great, and I was like, okay, not all the cards in this set are good, but, you know, if the next set, they give them 3 or 4 good cards, or even 2 good cards, that'll be great. And, you know, they didn't. The next set completely flopped, and then the final wave, they gave us 2 really good cards, but by then it was way too late. And I think that's what's going to happen with FA. But Pit Stop, oh boy, that's a good card. Probably in the next release, you'll see a similar thing happen where you have 3, like, okay-ish cards, probably another field spell for some reason, and then, like, 1 good quick play spell, which I just don't think is... It's just not going to work. They need, like, a searcher. They just need, like, a lot. Their typing is kind of weird as well, so there's really not anything that can search them out. I suppose you can summon, like, Flying Kamakuri #2 and crash it and stuff, and then summon these from the deck. That seems pretty bad. I don't know. This deck is, like, cool looking, and, like, it is cool how, like, so every set, if you're noticing here, they give a field spell that relates to the track that the 2 cars that they give us are gonna use. So this one is an off-roading, so we get, like, a dune buggy and, like, a weird motorcycle thing, probably like a motocross. And then on the first one, it was like a racetrack, so it's like a super speedy aerodynamic motorcycle, and then like a race car. So that's kind of neat. But I don't know, this deck is cool artwork. Maybe like the design is like almost there, but not quite. And I don't know. Let me know what you think about this. I'll stop rambling on about FAs, but I do feel that the quick play spell card is actually really, really good. It's just kind of stuck in a bad archetype, basically. But let me know, like I said, let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.